Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 3rd of May 2024, and these are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin with the Palestine-Israel war, the genocide, the war against humanity that has been going on since the last 210 days. Today is day 210 of that very conflict, that very war that has claimed the lives of tens of thousands of people. 34,622 is the latest casualty figure as far as those who have been butchered. But when it comes to those who have been injured, it exceeds 77,800 people. And this is just talking of Gaza, we are not talking of the West Bank. But the fact remains that despite the fact that there are talks of truce or a ceasefire between both the sides, much needs to be done and more needs to be seen on that front, although there is a lot of positive skepticism. On the other hand, when it comes to the universities across the world, whether it be in the United States or in Australia or in France, the protests continue to escalate, continue to increase. The Associated Press reports that police have arrested nearly 2,200 people during these protests from different universities in the United States of America, whether it be the Columbia University where it all started on the 17th of last month, or whether it be the other universities where it has now escalated, or in Australia or in France as well. We'll be highlighting different aspects of that in our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Press Freedom Day that is being observed across the world, including in Pakistan. The importance of press and its responsibilities is extremely important. Now, this year, the day has been dedicated to the importance of journalism and the freedom of expression in the context of the current global environmental crises. As far as the United Nations report is concerned, there have been many deaths and many pressure tactics on specifically on those journalists who have been covering environmental issues. We'll be highlighting different aspects of that as well as the messages by our President and Prime Minister on the occasion. Then we'll be talking about Pakistan's first lunar mission that has been launched today. Pakistan launched its first lunar orbit mission, the ICUBE-Q. Today. This mission was launched on board China's Chang'e 6 lunar probe from Henan in China. This is a long March 5 rocket, and it lifted off the Wenchang Space Launch Center in southern China's Henan province today. And of course, our Prime Minister was there to watch the events as they unfolded. This has been developed and designed by the Institute of Space Technology in collaboration with China's Shanghai University and Pakistan National Space Agency, SUPAC. We'll be highlighting that as well and talking to some exclusive people as far as this launch is concerned. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns Palestine and Israel, the conflict, the war, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing, the war against and the crimes against humanity that have been going on, and today is day 210 of that. We have been joined in the studio by Dr. Ijaz Khan. He's a foreign affairs expert. Dr. Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'll begin and we will concentrate in the beginning on these protests that have been going on in the United States as well as in different parts of the world. The Associated Press, which is one of the most renowned press agencies in the US, says that the police have arrested nearly 2,200 people during pro-Palestinian protests at different college campuses across the United States in recent weeks. They have used riot gear, tactical vehicles, flashbang devices to clear tent encampments and occupied buildings. What does that indicate as far as such protests and the US administration's reaction is concerned? Is the US fearful of such protests?
Yeah. Now, that is an important phenomenon to watch. Now, it brings out to the fore quite a few issues. One is specifically the Palestinian issue, the genocide, the atrocities, total violations of international laws of armed conflict, human rights, or considerations of humanity. A popular outrage at that. It shows, you see, the people of the United States, it reminds one of the students coming out against the Vietnam War in the 60s.
1968 to be precise.
60s, yes, in the early 60s, 68. Now, that is a good analogy. It shows one disagrees, condemns American politics, foreign policy on many issues, but It also shows the vibrancy of a democracy of peoples coming out. But then on the other side, it also shows the state's fear. I mean, its suppression, the actions that the state is taking, some of the scenes, the videos that you see, almost unless they are telling you that it is the United States, you think it is some third world state or some East European state. I mean, this is strange, the way you deal with them. Irrespective of whether you agree with their point of view or not, they are good or bad, this or that, that is one issue. But the way they are treated, protest, dissent, is a democratic right. That is what Americans, the West has been telling us in the third world. And the way they are dealing seems to be no different than anywhere else. So that is another thing. Then the US, it seems, I think we are witnessing a gradual change in the international system as well as domestic governance, in the overall human governance. And the state resistance, especially those at the top. You see, normally at the top, people resist change because it undermines them. The United States fears the changes taking place in the international system, which are long overdue. It has become a status quo, conservative, rather a reactionary power, resisting all changes, rather than going with the flow. And this shows in the United States as well as in the rest of the world, like Canada, Australia, France, elsewhere, the people are coming out. I mean, it's not just students. One can see even very senior faculty members. So old men, women in the United States condemning this treatment of protesters. It's a call for peace. And now how it affects will remain to be seen, but it cannot just be suppressed. That is what we have learned from even the West, the democratic argument is. So will it impact the US? At the moment, the US state is adamant. President Biden is adamant that it will not affect
his Middle East policy. He has said it quote unquote that these protests are not going to affect his Middle East policy. Then what is the basic aim of these protests if the administration is not moved by them in any way whatsoever?
That is always said, those in power, they say we are not going to be affected. Simply it is not possible to totally ignore the impact of popular uprising, popular voices. If they ignore it, is another issue that it is creating a rift, a polarization. See, we have also seen some counter attacks at, I guess it was Colombia, that some people, masked men came and attacked the encampment. So this, I mean, the ultra right, left, or whatever way you want to divide it, those are, I would say they are not pro-Palestine but pro-peace protesters and anti-peace people. And they are not just debating. The democratic way is to debate. That is their right to support Israel or whatever they want to. But they used to talk. They used to, or peaceful protest. Now it is becoming physical, not just the state, but at non-state level as well. And that is a threatening thing. So at the moment, what I see, even if they are adamant that it is not going to affect, in order to even preserve their status quo, they have to, it is in the inherent nature of change, that to stay up, you compromise, you give in some small space to keep measure. You give in small space. So
but Dr. Ijaz, the fact is, when you say that they will give in small space, I don't see them giving small space because they seem to be so much under the influence of Israel that come what may, the US seems to be adamant on pursuing and siding by Israel as far as its activities is concerned. I'd also like to add to the 2,200 plus arrests that there are 56 incidents of arrests at 43 different US colleges and universities that have been happening since the 18th of April, starting from Colombia. And you talked of Colombia, you know, this attack at the USC-LA that happened on Wednesday by masked counter demonstrators, they were pro-Israel and they did not want to show their faces that they are pro-Israel. I fail to understand is there a fear amongst the Jewish students in these universities that they will be apprehended sooner or later, or are there other elements that have the backing of Israel that are also trying to provoke some kind of violent reaction from these peaceful pro-Palestinian demonstrators?
Now, one thing, you see, we need to understand on all this conflict, extremists, intolerant people on all sides are trying to make it as a Jewish non-Muslim issue. Mind you, among these protesters, pro-peace protesters or pro-Palestine protesters, whatever you term them, these pro-peace, they include a large number of Jewish people as well, both students and faculty. So, and there are many non-Jewish who probably support what Israel is doing. So, it is actually the conflict, the division is between those who want peace, peaceful resolution of situation, running the affairs, human governance according to a law, rule of law, a democratic process, tolerance, and others who just say one my way, one my way or the highway. I mean, they just say it's me, I am the whole truth. Now, this extremism is being shown. So, they are trying to, you can see, look at the pro-Israelis, those who support Israeli authorities, they always term these protesters or all pro-peace, pro-Palestine people as anti-Semites, which is basically wrong. They know it. There may be some people who are, I am not saying that there is absolutely right, good on this side, evil on that side. There may be a few people, but most of them are some, like we just said, there are Jews among them, they cannot be. Now, they are not like that, but they want to portray it as it is anti-Semite. So, whatever you do, it's okay.
Dr. Ijaz, I think there is a deliberate attempt to blur the lines between Semitism, anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. I think these are two different things, but the lines are deliberately being blurred by Israel and all those who have or are adamant to pursue the policies of Israel, so as to term anything and everything that they might do as anti-Semitic.
That is the main problem. They are doing that, and they may get some short term, some people may get quiet because when they see it's anti-Semitism, they don't want to be seen, or may get a little support. But in the long term, not just long term, intermediate term, it is dangerous, because on the other side, also extremists are using this rhetoric that look, they are Jews and they are Jews and they are targeting Islam. So, Muslims should be, I mean, making it a Muslim cause. So, it feeds, these extremists feeds each other's arguments, each other's strength, and this means more intolerance, more division according to religious lines, which is not true. Which is not the
but there is a deliberate attempt to make that division and to increase that polarization.
You see, they gain because of that. When it becomes a religious thing, then religious extremists gets my support. When it is about economics or independence or democracy, then those who are fighting for human rights, democracy or plurality, they get my support. So, these people, Zionists especially, they are portraying it because one, they get political support, because more Jews, more they get support, and others who may not be Zionists, but they are supporting because of their political, they consider they can get short term support by using this. They can use religion as a tool of policy. They are doing that because, like you rightly said, see, Israel is a state, Jews are people, is a religion. Zionism within Jewry is a particular movement which talks of exclusivity of Jews. Now, all Jews are not Zionists. All, Jews, Israel does not represent whatever Jews all said. So, this has to be very clearly understood while condemning Israel, the state of Israel.
True. I think that is very important to also understand and demarcate the lines between these. Now, when you talk of demonstrations that began in Colombia, and I'd like to highlight, they have now disseminated into different countries. You talked of Australia, you talked of France, you talked of Canada as well. You know, in Paris, for example, the two biggest universities, Sorbonne and Sciences Po, have had huge protests, and French police have entered and they have managed to stop pro-Palestinian students in Sorbonne as well. In Canada, the Quebec Premier, François Legault, says that the encampment in McGill University needs to be dismantled. At the same time, students are also having protests at the University of Toronto, British Columbia, University of Ottawa. Justin Trudeau's office says, and I'd like to highlight the comment that said that that universities are places of learning, they're places of freedom of expression, but that only works if people feel safe on campus. Right now, Jewish students do not feel safe. That is not right. Is this phenomenon of the student protests highlighting the Israeli atrocities? Yes, I'm sure you agree with me on that. But this angle of it, that Jewish students do not feel safe, how much of truth is in that?
I think, you see, this is being exaggerated, clearly, like we earlier said, with a particular purpose in mind. Jewish, I don't, as far as I know and I've heard, we have not heard any incident of protesters attacking or harming any Jewish student, even those Jews who are openly pro-Israel, not just among the protesters there are Jews, but there are many other Jews or non-Jews who are against the Palestinian or the peace cause. There have been no attacks. So that fear is being exaggerated and wrongly presented just to justify, I mean, just to justify undoing them, taking action against them, strong arm tactics against them. That is the normal argument of all authoritarian regimes around the world, with Americans are known to condemn always. The authoritarians always use the same thing, that these opposition people are either foreign agents. Even one writer said they are quite well funded, insinuating that someone is funding them, things like that. So this thing is being done deliberately to justify action against them, coming again out of the fear of losing the control, the policy, the status quo, because they need Israel the way, I mean, they need it, I think this need, the way they feel at least, that they need Israel, strong Israel, Middle East, to control Middle East. This may backfire, most probably will gradually backfire. We can see gradually they are losing grip over the larger Middle East, and it can increase.
All right. Dr. Ijaz, there are universities where we see the police baton charging or clashing with the students, but there are other universities like the University of Minnesota who have reached an agreement with protesters not to disrupt the commencements, and similar compromises have also been made at the Northwestern University in Chicago, Rutgers University in New Jersey, and Brown University in Rhode Island. Do you feel if such how should I say, agreements keep on being implemented in different universities in the US and other places, that we will see an increase in such protests?
Yeah, it can mean increase in protests, not decrease. It will mean
this is what I'm saying, increase.
Yes, exactly. Because you see, now this will continue. Whether the state tries to suppress it will spread out. It may spread out of the universities. It may spread out of the universities. If they permit them, and this agreement is quite okay, because if these protesters, which I agree are for peace, they will not be disrupting anyone going to class. If someone does not want to be part of the encampment, once you go to a class, lectures are being held, scheduled. They are not asking anyway that you close down the university or anything. There is no such thing. So if that agreement is done and they continue to protest, it will give them strength and it will at least look good on the universities as well. But that needs a democratic, so some universities do retain that democratic approach of respecting the right to dissent as long as it is within the confines of law. Others are making excuses how to suppress it. That is where the mistake is being committed.
And that is where it could exaggerate or go out of control.
Spread out. It can spread out of the universities. It's not necessarily that you have to have a student card to protest, then any place, anywhere.
True. Now, the US President Dr. Ijaz breaks his silence on Thursday after the raid on the UCLA. He says Americans have the right to protest, but not to unleash violence. He says, I quote, destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancelling of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest. We all know he's seeking re-election in November against Donald Trump, who is getting more and more popular. In response to a reporter's question, Biden said, and we've already discussed that, he said the campus protests had not forced him to reconsider his priorities in the Middle East. Will there be political ramifications of these protests as far as the US is concerned and the upcoming elections are concerned?
I think that is very obvious. Very obvious. One can read the way we look at the American media reports, people meeting people, other things. Biden is losing popular support very fast. You see, because the support that he got was more from the liberal democratic center, and that tend to be more pro-peace amongst them. That he is losing that constituency, and he is not regaining the constituency that would support more extreme right. So he is losing at least by 30, 40, 50% of those who would have supported him, and without gaining any new one who are strong pro-Israel. That is the problem. The problem is he is being attacked both from left, right. The right is saying that he's not doing enough, and the other left is saying, what the hell are you doing? So I think one can see this man's rating is going down, and I don't know what happens in the election, but the chances of him getting re-elected are getting slimmer
with every passing day. Now, let's talk a little bit about what is happening in Palestine. The United Nations says yesterday that Gaza's post-war reconstruction will require an international effort that is unseen since the aftermath of the Second World War. He said it could cost approximately $40 billion US. They say most of Gaza has been reduced to a grey landscape of rubble. The scale of destruction is huge and unprecedented. The 72% of the residential buildings have been completely or partially destroyed. Will the world come to Palestinian aid?
That is a big question. The world will have no choice but to come. How much it comes, or whether it is able to come to the as expected, as estimated by the UN, and they have quite good system of evaluation of damage and requirements. We have seen the visuals. The whole living quarters are destroyed, hospitals destroyed, schools destroyed, all infrastructure is finished. So to reconstruct that, it will take a lot of money, and if they say it is between 30 and 40 billion, it must be like that, if not more. Will the world come?
That is a
has
huge
to come. The world, if the world doesn't come, it will be a huge, again, a political loss to the. It will be a loss. It will be a loss for the international peace and humanity. The world simply cannot afford to ignore that needs once peace is restored. The world cannot, just let the job of the Israel, there is a ceasefire. Ceasefire would be meaningless if there is no reconstruction. It means that Palestinians cannot live there. And if they cannot live there, there can be no life. They have to live somewhere else, which means Israel would have achieved. So it will be rather taking part, being complicit in the Israeli designs of clearing of Gaza and most of these territories. But the world cannot afford that. I can only expect the world will come up with the resources.
Last question, can the world, or is the world affording these 34,622 Palestinians who've been butchered by Israel, the 77,000 plus who've been wounded, and then it goes on rampage in Rafah, in other parts. The huge question mark on whether there will be a ground invasion on Rafah as well is also something that looms large over the people who are cramped there. 14,500 children plus 9,500 plus women have been killed so far. So many, thousands of Palestinians are in different kinds of jails in conditions that can be explained generally as despicable. can or when will Israel stop?
That is again $1 million.
Dollar
I wish
question.
they stopped yesterday, but will they stop? I think with all this bravado, will not stop. The pressure is increasing internationally from domestic societies. They have to stop sooner than later. It simply just cannot go on like human society does not work like that. When is a big question, but I think they are gradually understanding the heavy political as well as economic cost of continuing this atrocity.
What about Rafah? What do you think that there's going to be a ground invasion on Rafah? Because if you look at the Israeli side in the statements that come forward, it looks as if they are really hell-bent, despite whatever opposition they are having, to move into Rafah.
It looks like reports are that they are going there. I mean, for the past few days, we are hearing today, now, tomorrow. The question is, if they move ground offensive in Rafah, where most of those running away, taking refuge from Gaza are, as well as their own people, are taking refuge. So it is by large a heavy civilian concentration. It will be a disaster for the people and for any hope of peaceful return to peace. It will be a total disaster and it will be difficult for, you see, while conducting war, while laws and different rules are made, is because they always have that one day the hostilities will end and you have to return to peace. So something has to be left. Though there you can, if you end everything, then you cannot hope for return to peace, because all war, it cannot be indefinite.
True.
War. So
but it looks as if it had been the things had been in Israel's shoes, they would have continued the war till the last Palestinian was exterminated.
Yes, they would want to, but can they is the question.
True. Thank you so very much, Professor and Doctor, I should say rather, Ijaz Khan Sahab, to have joined us, to have talked to us, and to have given us your eminent point of view on what is going to happen and how these different protests and how this new generation of students and the way they are raising their voices for the people of Palestine is changing the whole global and regional perspective on what people think or will be thinking as far as the West and the US and Israel is concerned. Let's hope something positive comes out of it in the next couple of days. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, to have joined us. Let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the Press Freedom Day, which is being observed across the world and also in Pakistan. Now, this year the day has been dedicated to the importance of journalism and freedom of expression in the context of the current global environmental crisis. We'll be joined by two guests for this segment. Our first guest is online, PJ Mir. He's a senior journalist. PJ Mir Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. My first question regards, of course, the message of this very day, that is the importance of journalism and freedom of expression in the context of the current global environmental crisis. How do you view this year's theme?
Well, first of all, I mean, these are two-pronged question. As far as the freedom of expression is concerned, yes, there should be freedom of expression, and but not at the expense of state interest. No country in the world, we all talk about democracy, we all talk about freedom of expression, but remember one thing, that there are red lines and you do not cross those red lines. And those red lines may be security related, maybe intelligence related, maybe, of a national emergency related. So those lines cannot be crossed and must not be crossed. That's where your red line is. But yes, apart from that, as I've always said, and in fact, I quote the words of former Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz, that those countries which cannot, let's say, sustain criticism on themselves will never progress. And that's quite right. Criticism is there, providing the criticism is productive, effective, and in the long run, beneficial. That is what criticism is, or you can call it, perhaps observations or perhaps opinions. But just for the heck of it or the sake of it, if you start, crossing the red line, that damages the national institutions, that damages the national policies, and as it does all over the world. I mean, we all see that, if something happens like here or in India or in the South Asian countries, the West always, gangs up and, starts giving their own verdict. But what about them? I mean, we've seen what happens there. We've seen that if you really go overboard, what happens? I mean, you got one fantastic example of George Galloway. I mean, when he goes overboard, they gag him, and all of a sudden there are lots of, let's say, incriminating evidence against him produced, even during the course of the Iraq War. So these things do happen. So yes, freedom of expression has to be there, must be there, but it must also see, that this expression does not violate national security or national state interest.
All right, PJB sir, stay online with us. We've also been joined by Javed Siddiq sahab. He's a seasoned journalist. Thank you very much, Javed sahab, to have joined us. I'd like to refer to the messages by our President and our Prime Minister on the very occasion. Both have talked about the safety and security of journalists and how measures need to be initiated for those in order to enable them to freely report on important issues. And of course, they pay tribute to the media workers, the writers and the cameramen. President Asif Ali Zardari says that independent press is essential for highlighting issues of global importance, dispelling fake news and myths, and serving as a watchdog for society. He also said it has a crucial role for creating awareness about issues of global concern, including climate change. That is, of course, the theme for this year. Green technologies, pollution and global warming. How important are these statements and how applicable are these in a society like ours?
Well, I think there are no two opinions about the freedom of press. And this day is being celebrated to basically remind the people, remind the governments, remind the societies that press freedom is a must for a robust democracy in the world. And press is very important. So the President's message on this occasion is that he has recognized the role of media, journalists in reforming, in basically educating the people, informing them, and building their thought process. That is the crux of the message. But at the same time, I think journalists in Pakistan have paid huge sacrifices to keep the freedom of press alive. And they were imprisoned, of course, they were given a lot of punishments, but they survived and they continued their struggle for the freedom of press. However, in the present circumstances, when the social media is a new dimension of the press, previously when the print media was there, it was easy to basically give correct and authentic information to the people. But then the technological changes have basically transformed the landscape at all. And I believe that the social media has played a very important role in disseminating disinformation, fake news, and basically hurting the people's feelings. So I think that needs to be tackled.
Right.
The responsibility of the journalists is to do responsible journalism. Journalism with responsibility is a slogan, is a motto which is adhered to by all respected journalists and all responsible journalists throughout the world. And this is the motto which has been followed by all the journalists who have some reputation, who have made huge contribution towards positive journalism.
All right. PJ Mir, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif calls on the freedom of press expression. They say it's the foundation of democracy and the protection of civil rights as well as the voice of truth in the society. He talks about creating a conducive atmosphere to ensure smooth media functioning. He also believes that freedom of media and expression provide guarantees for democratic durability. And he also said that the government will make efforts to uplift the media industry and resolve the issues confronting it. What are the issues that the media industry is confronted with? What are the challenges that you see being a part of the media industry yourself? What needs to be done for the uplift of the media industry?
Well, for starters, look at PTV. At one time, it was a gagged up organization. They couldn't speak. You couldn't sit there or criticize the government. But today, there's a change. You can talk about the government. You might even criticize the government. And now that is a major change, which you don't really see in other state televisions. So this is a major progress. But at the same time, you see, a lot of onus is also on the political party or the incumbent leadership, that when you come into power, you speak about freedom of expression, but then don't gag up the press. Because we've seen governments come and go, and when it doesn't suit them, journalists are basically told and, take a certain line and this and that. But yes, it is getting better. Yes, we weren't that bright, but yes, today one can say at least we are moving ahead. And what the Prime Minister has said, it's a reassuring a statement from the Prime Minister's office that yes, they wanted to. And I expect when it comes, push to a crunch, let's see what the government does then. But I'm pretty sure that this government, I think it is not in the mood of gagging up the press. It is not in the mood of, just suppressing it. So yes, it's a start. It's a good start. But again, it remains to be seen how long this start continues or stays in force. But at the end of the day, you've got to look positively and not in a negative way. Whatever has happened in the past has happened in the past. We've got to move on and look ahead.
I totally agree with you on that. Let's look at what measures will be taken in the coming weeks. Javed Sahab, the war in Gaza has highlighted the perils that are faced by the journalists in conflict zones. We have also seen how they react in different other conflict zones. We've seen what happens in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir as well. Now, according to a New York-based committee to protect journalists, at least 97 members of the press have been killed since the war broke out in Gaza. 92 are Palestinians. Now, UNESCO on Thursday has awarded the World Press Freedom Prize to all the Palestinian journalists that have been covering the war in Gaza. Praises, of course, have come for the journalists from all across the world, from Palestine, whether it be Motaz, Ijaz, will it be Bisan Wada. How important is the role of journalists in conflict zones like IIOJK, like Palestine, who show unwavering support and courage while reporting on human rights abuses?
I think the targets in Gaza particularly were the journalists, because journalists were reporting the barbaric acts of Israel, the genocidal war that was unleashed on the people of Palestine, and that was being reported. And all those journalists who were reporting independently about the Israeli offensive against the Palestinians, in which more than 34,000 Palestinians have been killed, those journalists were targeted. And as you have said, that the Committee for Protection of Journalists has come out with figures, 97 out of them, most of them
are Palestinians.
And Al Jazeera and other news organizations and news outlets who were boldly reporting and exposing the Israeli so-called defense forces and their barbaric attacks on innocent Palestinians, killing men, women and children, and attacking hospitals and mosques and schools and the other areas. So I think journalists have done a great job, and Palestinian journalists deserve salute, because they have done a remarkable job in exposing a country which claims to be a state, and claims that it is not doing anything, and it is reacting because it was attacked and aggressed by the Hamas. So I think that so-called position has been exposed by these journalists. Journalists all over the world face tremendous threats in the war zones, whether it was World War II or the Spanish Civil War and Vietnam War, and elsewhere the journalists have faced these situations. But particularly in Gaza, the journalists were targeted because they were telling the truth and they were informing the world as to what was happening in Gaza. Secondly, the Indian-held Kashmir, ever since the Modi government has annexed Kashmir, which had a special status in the Indian constitution, to the Indian state, and the reign of terror that was unleashed on the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and particularly the journalists who were working for foreign agencies or local press. They were imprisoned, incarcerated, they were persecuted, and these reports have been coming out from there, and still there are journalists who are imprisoned. That's a very, very sad state.
And then we've got courageous reporters and journalists like Rana Ayub and others who have continued to highlight these atrocities.
Some of the journalists who were going abroad from
have stopped, like Rana Ayub, and of
yes,
course,
exactly.
yes, that is true. PJ Mir, let's talk about this year's theme, and that is on environmental journalism. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres highlights an uptick in violence faced by journalists who cover environmental issues, and he says this profession has become exceedingly dangerous because of that. The UNESCO's Chief of Freedom of Expression and Safety of Journalists says a report finds that 70% of journalists who do environmental reporting have dealt with at least one form of violence, and a quarter of the surveyed journalists dealt with legal attacks. He says in the past 50 years, 44 journalists covering environmental stories have been killed. Why are environmental stories so dangerous that people are killed or people are subjected to violence?
Well, the environment as we know now, well, for starters, in the American elections, the environment is one of the major topics they fight their elections on. Environment in the world is being absolutely desecrated. It's being destroyed. And when you report, yes, there are hindrances. Yes, there is a mafia. There is always a group of people who will oppose it, and they'll start persecuting the journalists one way or the other. And yes, you're quite right on that one. But at the end of the day, the journalists have to, no matter what country you're in, you need to speak about the environment because it is a decaying environment around the globe. Look at particularly in Punjab, in Haryana, what we get here, acid rain, we get here, the smog and all that kind of, filth which is coming in, in the form of impurities. Well, if you don't speak about it, then who will? Well, at the end of the day, things are not that bright on it. But coming on to, what we really need to be doing is that we need to have specialists who need to speak on this. We don't have people, who are specialists on the environments to come and talk on it. Remember one thing, you will always have, for example, if you write about highlight the Amazon forests or, areas like that. Yes, there is a lot of tree cutting. You're destroying the wildlife. You're destroying the environment. There's a global, as they say, a window being formed up there where, we're losing, very, very, very good quality air. So, yes, we need to be speaking about it. But then again, how long do we speak about it? Is this one of those subjects which sell? Do you really think this gets a rating as far as television or media is concerned? No, it doesn't. You only see this in specialized channels and Discoveries and National Geographics, or even in PTV World, where they have natural programs. But apart from that, you don't see anything of that. So, if somebody is trying to do something good, perhaps on reforestation, well, do we ever see any good programs on that? No. You go into Kashmir on the Pakistan
side. It needs to change, PJ Mir. I think the whole strategy needs to change as far as journalistic ethics, standards, and those topics that we cover. I think the basic responsibility of a journalist is to highlight all the positivities, but also tell what is not happening in the proper manner, whether it be on environment, whether it be on tourism, whether it be on social issues. I think we need to highlight it with a certain responsibility so as not to give rise to more polarization, but to instill an understanding within the public as far as that is concerned. Thank you very much, PJ Mir, to have joined us. It was a pleasure talking to you today on the World Press Freedom Day, and I think you are one of the most how should I say, those persons who understand what press freedom is and what press responsibility is as well. Thank you very much to have joined us, and thank you also to Javed Siddiq Saab, our seasoned journalist, to have come all the way to the studios to talk about world press freedom. That I think is very dear to you, but as you yourself have said, press freedom comes with a certain price, and that price is ethics and responsibility, and that needs to be understood by each and everyone. Thank you very much, Javed, to also have joined us. Let's come to our last segment, and that concerns, that is on a very positive note. Pakistan today launched its first lunar orbit mission, the ICUBE-Q. Now, this lunar mission has been launched on board China's Chang'e 6 lunar probe from Henan in China aboard the Long March 5 rocket. It has been designed, developed by the Institute of Space Technology in collaboration with China's Shanghai University and Pakistan's National Space Agency, SUPARCO. This mission will facilitate scientific research, technology development and educational initiatives in space exploration. Now, to talk more on this, we've been joined by Wu Li, CGTN space reporter all the way from China, to tell us more. Over to you.
And we're about 3 kilometers away from the launch pad. And just now, China's 8th Long March 5 rocket lifted off, sending the Chang'e 6 probe into the orbit. And now Chang'e 6 is on the way to the Earth-Moon transfer orbit. This is China's 2nd time for the lunar collection missions. But this time, Chang'e 6 will try to land on the South Pole Atacama Basin, which is on the far side of the moon, and will be the lunar sample there will be much older and has a lot of more secrets. We know that there are 4 international scientific payloads equipped on the Chang'e 6 probe. French space agency's Dawn instrument, and also laser reflector from Italy, another equipment from European Space Agency, and also a special CubeSat called ICUBE-Q, co-developed by Pakistan and China. It's also equipped with Chang'e 6 probe. The ICUBE-Q CubeSat will be entering the lunar orbit, and the camera will take pictures of the moon. So this is a very exciting and interesting project co-developed by Pakistan and China. We can see the international collaboration is a major highlight of this mission. China is also to launch the Chang'e 7 and Chang'e 8 missions, which will further study the south pole of the moon. And China has already proposed to build an international lunar research station along with international partners. Many countries like Russia, Azerbaijan, South Africa, and also Thailand have already signed agreements with China.
Wonderful to have listened to you. Now, Professor Qamar Islam, who's a project head of ICUBE-Q, also talked to Wu Li. Let's see what he had to say as far as this very important lunar mission is concerned.
We are very pleased to have Professor Qamar from Pakistan, and he will show us the interesting cooperation between China and Pakistan about this ICUBE-Q aboard the Chang'e 6 probe. So, Professor Qamar, what do you think about this cooperation between China and Pakistan about this lunar mission?
I think this is a great cooperation, and we learned a lot. Actually, this opportunity we got is through EBSCO, and the CNSA provided this opportunity to all the EBSCO member states. So what happened was that we presented our design, and it was accepted. And then the time was short, but we had very close meetings with the CNSA people, and also with Shanghai Jiaotong University here, and we were able to achieve all those milestones. And now it is where we are is that it's being launched in the moon, and we are very excited. We had earlier experience on launching a low Earth CubeSats, and that helped us a lot. But going to the moon was much more stringent requirements were there, and we had a very good learning experience. And one thing I just want to say is that whenever we wanted to have a meeting with CNSA, they gave us time, and I think that helped us a lot in achieving our goals.
So what exactly was this ICUBE-Q CubeSat to do on the moon's orbit?
Okay, so there are a number of things that it will do. Primarily, it has got an imaging payload, and it has got a cameras, and the orbit is such that it will be closest to the moon towards the south side of that. So we will be able to do imaging of that. Then second, another thing is that we are able to qualify the subsystems, because radiation levels on the moon is much higher, and to go to the moon, there are some thermal challenges also because of the temperatures. So we got to learn about that, and so when it will be operating, we will know how it is operating. The gravity model of the moon is different. So the orbital dynamics will be different. So we will have, based on that data, we're going to learn a lot about the orbital dynamics of that, how to control the satellite. So there are so many things that we will be able to learn from this mission.
Okay. Are you expecting more cooperation with China on the further lunar programs?
Yes, we very much hope to do that. We hope to that the future Chang'e missions that are going, in particular Chang'e 8, and we want to have another cooperation with that. Secondly, SPARCO and Pakistan government have signed an MOU with the CNSA, with the ILRS, which is the station. And I think there will be a lot of opportunities for Pakistan and for us as universities to cooperate in different research areas there.
Okay, let's wish a very successful launch and the future cooperation.
Thank you very much, and we are really very excited, and I say to all the Pakistanis that I am so happy to be here. It's a great and momentous day for Pakistan, and our youth and our researchers are very excited and are motivated to do more research work in the space, and we will go together in space and do a lot of work.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Pakistan. And with that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you, inshallah, next week with more stories that concern you, Pakistan, and our social issues. With that, have a wonderful weekend. Allah Hafiz.